Well, hello again, everyone. This is part 3 of the introductory module of the Arts and Culture of Asia, where we're going over basic terms and concepts that relate to the arts and our understanding of them, which will set the stage for our chronological deep look into the Asian art, beginning with the Indus Valley civilization and ending in this class with modern and contemporary Asian art. Where were we in part 2? We had just finished our unit on painting, and I decided it would be best if I made a fourth. I hope I didn't say third when I began this video. This is part 4 of this segments that begin our course. It's okay. So let me go to my image here. Share screen. And we should soon be seeing, here we are, ephemeral art. So ephemeral art is usually used to describe a work of art that only occurs once and cannot be embodied in any lasting object to be shown in a museum or gallery. And at the end of part 3 of the previous video, I hinted at why that would be meaningful. For example, in sacred ritual, a form might be understood as so precious that it should not be preserved, but only rendered and then wiped away, which is what we find, for example, in Native American sand painting and in Aboriginal or Indigenous Australian sand work. But in your discussion assignment, you will be looking at Tibetan sand painting, which I'll get to in just a moment, and its deep the content that is tied to ephemeral and the materiality of a work of art being intentionally eliminated. So this is the counter to thinking about durability in intent. We are now thinking about ephemerality as an intent and what meanings and significance in relation to the culture and the artist we can draw from that. Here we're looking at ephemeral tidal rings by an Australian artist. And the photographs, of course, with their beautiful reflection of a sunset in pastels is durable. It's a photograph, and we certainly don't exclude photographs as art. And we will look at some photographs, Asian photographers, later on in this class. But the sand paintings themselves, these tidal rings drawn in the sand are ephemeral. And that is the intent of the artist, that they would appear and then be washed away with the tides. And that's a very vibrant, it's not so much vibrant, it's a very potent expression of a poetry of impermanence, to say the least. And we wanted to know more about this artist's intentions. We would do some research, but we know it's ephemeral. Here are the Tibetan Buddhist sand mandalas that you will be looking at in video in this unit, this module in great detail. Watch all the videos, they're excellent. They're covering the same topic, but from slightly different angles. And I think I went through a lot, and I think these are quite well done. As you'll find in the video, this is fine sand that's being carefully placed without allowing powder to blend with loose powder beside it. So the act itself is quite meditative. And then at the end, there is a very carefully choreographed wiping away of the sand, and then gathering the sand, all of which had been so carefully ordered with such precision and carried to the water and washed away in a river or ocean to rejoin the matter of the world. So there's a deep Buddhist investment and meaning in this practice and ritual. And I think some of you might be thinking right now, well, the ritual and the sequence of steps of the painting is an art form too. And indeed it is. And it's bound by time, it's temporal. And insofar as it's very, very fixed, one could say it's durable in that it's being followed with great precision. But we know when we copy and follow, something is always slightly changed. So I leave it up to a Tibetan Buddhist sand painter to explain that to me. But the sand painting itself, the mandala, is ephemeral. It is washed away. And what I want you to think about in your assignment is the layers of meaning embedded in that. A contemporary Japanese artist, Fujiko Nakaya, has become very well known for her work in creating artistic environments and fog sculptures. And these are large-scale installations which express a ephemeral sculptural form through jets that emit fog in very particular ways and thoughtfully composed in relationship to the environment. And indeed, this very nonviolent relation to land and the planet, no doubt, can be mapped to our own anxieties as a civilization and world that's struggling with its own environmental impact on our home and on nature. So when you watch the videos that I've provided of Fujiko, you can think about that. But what I want you to think about most of all is this idea of sculpture as ephemeral, as an experience without an enduring element that lasts beyond the encounter and its changeability. And the questions I provided in the assignment further on in this module will guide you through that process. And Nakaya's work is in Japan, it's in Australia, it's been in San Francisco, in fact, which is where I am right now. And I'm quite close to the Golden Gate Bridge and can hear the fog horns. And there's a really nice video of her talking about doing fog sculpture in a city that is frequently experiencing nature's angels, as some people call them, or fog sculpture coming over our bridge and into our city. Anyway, that's kind of something else. You might come across that if you look her up and become intrigued as you watch some of the videos I've sent you. That interview is really easy to find. Now, moving into our final topic of the arts, temporal arts. Now, if you look at the word temporal and you take off the R-A-L, you see tempo. And tempo, we know, is in music, and it's in dance. It can be fast, it can be very slow. But it is a way of ordering time and our body or some aspect of our experience to intervals in time. And what is an interval? It is the distance between 2 points in time. So an interval of sound, the silence is the interval until there's another. That's an interval. So there are works of art that very intentionally align to time as choreographed intervals like dance and music. Or there are arts that are not linked to any fixed tempo, but they unfold in time nonetheless. So the interval changes, but it is never not some point from the past to the present that's moving into a future moment. And so temporal arts aren't only music. I brought this example in just because we spent so much time looking at sculpture. These are ice figurines in Birmingham. It was an exhibit or an event where 5,000 small ice figurines were placed on Birmingham steps with photographs of men and women who lost their lives in World War I. Just a few photos, but many, many little ice sculptures. And they melted over the course of 4 hours. And the process of the melting and the disappearance and the turning into water, running together, is a quite powerful way of conveying loss and loss of lives that will always be nameless in the history of the 20th century and its devastating wars. So if you decide to look this up and read further about it, it conveys a very particular effect of loss in a very palpable way. So this is temporal. It would not work if we saw the pools of water after they were melted, nor would it be as powerful if we didn't see, as those who beheld it did, the figurines before they began to slowly change and lose their definition and become the anonymous multitudes. Numbers lost in the 20th century in its First World War. Now, onto a lighter note, we go to Kabuki theater in Japan, which we will be looking at in this class, and it unfolds in time. We cannot grasp the Kabuki theater's full meaning and content and aesthetic form unless we witness it together with the actors, following a choreography that is precisely timed, that is temporally oriented. Similarly with the Peking opera, which is a Chinese art form that's very beautiful and very intricate. We'll be looking at the Peking opera. Maybe, and some of you may choose to do a project on it. It unifies multiple arts. And then going back to music and Western India and Rajasthan, you might remember from part 1 when I talked about painting. In part 1 of this class, we were looking at a painting of Krishna and a woman below, in the introductory terms, who was playing a sitar. And here we see contemporary musical collaborations in Rajasthan in India. And we'll be talking about Indian music and its form. And I'll do my best to link it to visual arts and to belief systems as best as I can. And the beauty of being trapped in a world of video, as we are, is I can share more music with you more readily and less disruptively, because everything we're doing together is video. Anyway, film is another example. Here's The Color of Paradise by Majid Majidi, and we'll be looking at this particular filmmaker as an example of contemporary filmmaking in an Islamic country. This actually is in Iran, but it is such a it's a film that is very relevant and crosses into themes in this class quite well, and a form of filmmaking in the contemporary world that is well worth looking at in a class on the arts of Asia. We understand literature to be temporal insofar as we cannot grasp the entire content of a text at once. But this means also many durable art forms also act in time and temporally. Think of long narrative cycles where we have to understand the full meaning of a decorative program, for example, or a narrative that's told visually. We have to pass from one to the next to grasp the full meaning. So temporal and durable and ephemeral aren't mutually exclusive. They may cross and inform one another in varying degrees. This is just a cover of a famous work of Japanese literature, The Tale of Genji. We're going to be looking at a contemporary Japanese author in the Pillow Book, who the authors were aware of one another. And so this is just another of that genre of insight into courtly life in Japan. Lastly, I'd like to close with discernment in the arts. When we classify art into different categories, it helps us understand and organize information and make sense of it, but it's always a form of violence because few things sit easily in clean classification. Humans bring that to the world. The world doesn't form in classes. That being said, let us look at a final example where a haiku poem, quietly, quietly, yellow mountain roses fall, sound of the rapids. This is a form of Japanese poetry influenced by Zen Buddhism, and it's meant to invite meditation, and it can almost be grasped like a picture at once, as the ink and color painting here as well can be grasped. And I'm going to let you go. It's nearly at the end of my YouTube maximum, and this is the end of our segment. Thank you.